We're going to the NFC North. What kind of diet? We just comparing everybody's free agency haul to diets, Sam. So Chicago Bears are up next. What does their food intake look like?
Well, I guess if Dallas was, a vegan who just needed a steak, uh, then the Bears is close to the carnivore diet. It's like we now look free.
The
The
Vikings went
draft
to
hasn't
Fogo.
happened yet.
The Vikings went to Fogo. They went all you can eat steak buffet, steak, lamb chops. It's fillets
Yes,
and lamb chops like we like to get at Fogo when we go there, Sam. So
right.
save that for the Vikings.
Okay, well, so the Vikings are Fogo. Well, then the Bears is just like the Bears is a trip to the steakhouse.
Yeah.
So it's like it
Uh,
was largely protein, largely meat, largely reasonably high priced. But there's vegetable options, right? Like there's sides. The sides rock up to the table at a steakhouse. So it's meat based, but it's still reasonably solid.
So Bears, obviously, they reshaped their offensive line. Joe Thuney, the trade, bringing him in at left guard. I already mentioned that as my favorite move for any NFC team. Drew Dalman, 3 years, $42 million to play center. And they traded for Jonah Jackson, former Lion, former Ram. So the interior of the offensive line has been reshaped. You still have Braxton Jones, who's been a dependable left tackle. Darnell Wright progressing at right tackle. So it's looking like a much better offensive line. And the Bears also did work on the defensive line. Dayo, Odeyingbo for 3 years, $48 million. And then Grady Jarrett for 3 years, $43.5 million, coming off of his release from the Atlanta Falcons. As Ryan Poles has reshaped this roster, we've said a bunch. They almost did it the opposite of the Lions. And ironically, Ben Johnson's coming in from the Lions. The Lions did it inside out. I think the Bears almost did it outside in, where you got guys like DJ Moore at receiver. You spent his first 2 draft picks were on in the secondary, Kyler Gordon, Jawan Brisker. So they went on the perimeter a lot more. They spent a ton of money at linebacker, but now they're finally these last 2 years starting to invest properly in the trenches with Montez Sweat, a few draft picks at defensive tackle, these 2 defensive tackle signings, and all the offensive line moves. This was like the next piece, I think, for the Bears in their whole team building effort.
Yeah, I mean, so I really like what they've done on the offensive line, obviously. I think that they clearly, Ben Johnson understands the power that Detroit offensive line has had for his offense the last few years and wants no part of discovering if it still functions with a subpar offensive line. So they are going hard to rebuild that group, make sure it's in a good space, which gives them options. Number one, it means they can talk themselves into like an Ashton Genty at the top of the draft and for it to make sense, right? Like, let's put the situation in place so that Genty can actually come in and make an impact, as opposed to let's have a bad situation and hope that he fixes it. So that's good. Number two, it means that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams can just go to work, right? Now we know the offensive line's in a solid spot. Now let's see what those two can do and work together. My question for you is, I like the offensive side. What do you make of the defensive line additions? Because, Grady Jarrett at his age, 10 years into his career with the sort of quote unquote decline that he's in at the moment, is that a permanent thing? Or is he just coming off a couple of not great years? And then that kind of money for Odeyingbo, those to me seem less encouraging, less optimistic, less overtly good than the offensive ones. And by the way, just to answer people in the chat, we didn't skip Washington. We did Washington right at the start, where we talked about our favorite hits. So we go back to the start of this, or when we do the timestamps in the YouTube, you'll see Washington at the start.
Yeah, we haven't even, and we're not even going in like alphabetical order or anything. So we liked the Commanders so much, we started them with the NFC East because they were one of our favorites. I think for me, I think the entire defensive tackle market is overrated. And I know that's just where the market is, but I think a lot of those players have been overpaid. So there's not a lot of defensive tackle moves. Even Milton Williams, like, is he going to actually be worth $26 million a year? That's going to be tough to do. It's tough for me to say, yeah, you're getting proper bang for your buck, but it's just where the money is right now at defensive tackle. So I don't think you're going to look at too many of those deals and say, oh yeah, you got a great value. When we talk about the Lions, 1 year for Levi Onwuzurike, who has injury concerns, right? Has one healthy year in 4.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to look like good value if he stays healthy, but it's tough. Grady Jarrett at this point in his career, coming off of his essentially a pretty steady decline over the last 3 years. And Odeyingbo, I think, is probably a little overrated as he's a movable guy, 6'6", 285. He can play on the edge a little bit, create some mismatches. He's a good low-end starter for me and rotational type piece. So, yeah, that's a lot of money for those types. And I already don't love what they have there. I think, Gervon Dexter did a nice job developing last year. I still don't have a lot of faith in him in the run game. So throwing bodies at it is fine, but yeah, I think there's some overpaying there for those guys, and I think there's more work to do. How many times have I said more work to do for these teams? Like if they have another explosive edge, that's why I think defensive line's in play for them at 10. If the James Pierces and Mike Greens of the world, I would like to add one of those guys, explosive edge rusher, to the mix here for the Bears, and I think they're looking a lot better.
I think, yeah, you're right. It's worth sort of making the point of this is just where the market has gone at this stage. Like Grady Jarrett's $15 million a year feels really rich, but that's 5% of today's cap, right? And that cap's going to be going up, maybe 10% year on year. So it's not a huge amount. Even Milton Williams, the deal that he signed, it still only makes him the third highest paid defensive tackle in the game, right? He didn't break the Christian Wilkins mark from a year ago. Was that a year ago? Last year?
Yeah.
Like Christian Wilkins, I think, is probably a better player than Milton Williams, and the market has reflected that as well. Like even where Milton Williams was kind of the jewel of this offseason, he didn't break the Christian Wilkins average per year. And those two guys are both behind Chris Jones, who's obviously a better player than either guy. So even Milton Williams' number this year is 9% of the salary cap. Like it's expensive, but it's not crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to overpay for defensive tackles. And I believe, I will continue to reiterate this, I believe it's a scarcity thing, not this is what the NFL believes in, interior pressure over edge pressure. It's a scarcity thing. There's just the 2019 draft class spoiled us with Jeffrey Simmons, Ed Oliver, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, those guys. Not many of those guys exist. And so the players who look like just good rotational players are making 10, 15, up to $20 million. That's just where we are. We'll talk about these guys with the Panthers in a few minutes here as well. So look, overall, I think I like what the potential looks like for the Bears. It's not just pass protection from the offensive line. Dalman's a good run blocker. Thuney's just one of the best guards in the league. I think they're going to be able to run the ball more effectively as well. So I think it's all trending in the right direction for the Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.